Hi everyone. So this is going to be my review of my fourth round game in the Dutch Open, played a week ago. You can find rounds 1, 2, and 3 already on the YouTube channel. So this particular game is already somewhat starting to shape the tournament results, because at this point I was 3-0 in the tournament, and Jonas was also 3-0 in the tournament. He'd just beaten Lukas Podpera, who was the only other undefeated player in the top group. And therefore, whoever wins this game between us would be probably the tournament favorite at for win 0 losses, with 2 rounds still to go, so not a guaranteed win of the tournament, but would have a big advantage. And I think at this point we were both very confident. I had gone 3-0 against quite strong opponents, and he had also, I'm not sure it's a feat, at least in my case, that I could repeat. So I was quite happy, and I was very confident. I was high on my own confidence, as you may see this game. And I'm sure Jonas was also very confident. That's how he rolls. So it was a clash of egos to an extent, and a very fun game. Fun game in retrospect. Only in retrospect. So let's get into it. The beginning, again, I was trying to play quickly. I know Jonas is a rather slow player, so I thought he'll get into Byoyomi quickly, and 20 seconds one time. Fun for me. And this Joseki, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable invading this space between the two black stones, so my policy when I do so is basically to settle as quickly as possible, and that's what I did here. I just settled the group. I have like 10 points. I have a solid group. And black has some shape issues to handle. What do you do about this shape? And I expected J4, but Jonas played J3 instead, which I think is a little bit suboptimal because it gives me some agi around J4 for later. This, of course, J4 does leave a cutting point, but this isn't a cutting point that black usually worries about. You can just let white capture the stone and go and take Sente again, right? White's not interested in doing this for the moment. The weakness is there, but it's, I think, less interesting than the agi that white gets later around this stone. So, but this result is even, nevertheless. I got Sente, I played Q11, which sort of limits black's structure. And I think at this moment, maybe I was fantasizing, but I believe that I saw a little bit of doubt in Jonas's demeanor, because I thought he was sort of unsure about how to use this wall, and what he came up with eventually was the shoulder hit, where he's sort of trying to, like, it seems that he's sort of trying to go for some idea. This is what I expected, where like these guys are sort of trying to work with these guys and building something sort of abstract, and that's fine. I mean, I don't mind that idea for black. I think it's a good idea. But in the game, he actually went down to d10, which I considered a mistake. And the reason I considered a mistake is that this shape gets Haned and Haned. And Hane on the head of 3 stones, it's a famous shape. I consider that these stones are a little bit hard to deal with for black. And this game, I think, really showed that. So I got off to a good start. He attached c7, which I sort of expected, because the idea is that you sort of want to take advantage of the fact that the stone at A is sort of loose. But if you try anything immediately, I mean, white just escapes. So you're sort of preparing, right? That's the idea. And of course, here I was considering, what if I just fix the shape? And I was concerned that then black can get the time to Hane and just play here and then fix the important shape point, so that these 3 stones never become a problem. And I didn't want to give that to black, so after a little bit of reading, I spent quite a long time considering this move. For the first 45 moves of the game, I played very quickly. And then I played e8. And the idea of e8 is just to, as quickly as possible, strike right at the shape problem of these stones. And I think it's a good decision. I read what happened in the game. It's sort of a forced sequence. If black simply protects his stone in some way or another, black shape is bound to be inefficient. Something like this connection is just purely inefficient. And already, black shape is just bad. I mean, I play this way also, to be quite honest. Like, this is a random variation, not what would happen, but just black's stone here is not efficient. So black, in order to make an efficient shape, black needs to go for what he went in the game, which is not that, to connect. And I had read this, and here black is trying to say, well, you can't really enclose my stones because I can get out, so it's hard for you to sacrifice the 3 stones. And in the meanwhile, your only way of surviving with the 3 stones is to Hane, which is what I did. And I read this out before I played e8. Wait, not that. And then we got to this position, which is very interesting. And actually, after the game we reviewed, and Jonas told me that he made a misread here. He believes that he can push, and I can't block. Well, like, he has to play a precise order. He can play here, and now I can't block because, again, precise order, he has to take the liberty first. I can't block because black will cut and kill, and that therefore I will also find it difficult to block now. And even if I block now, there's still a big shape problem for the cut later. So therefore, him pulling out with a stone like he did in the game with this Kosumi means that, according to him, these stones are sort of creating a shape problem in white. And this is a mistake, and the reason that this is mistaken logic is that if black ever pushes, white can block. And the reason is, after black cuts, white does not take the stone and let black take another liberty. White connects. And this is a standard reading shape. It's a very common theme when you have stones in the first line. You don't have to take, you can connect and get liberties that way. And he missed this, which is a little bit surprising because Jonas is quite good at calculation. And this is just a standard theme that should not be missed by a player his level. The point is that now after black plays the Atari, black goes down. It's just okay for white. If black starts the other way, now there's never a problem ever with this cutting point. So he mentioned that he saw this now, and then he also felt like he had a bad position. And the reason is that even though black sort of broke into white's left side, black is very busy now, because white doesn't have a shape weakness, really. You know, white crawled unpleasantly on the first and second line, but now it's black that has all the problems. It's white here that's becoming an issue. It's black's marked stones that are really heavy and cumbersome, and from now on, white basically has the run of the game for the next few moves. And in this position, I understood that I have a lot of power, but I was not entirely sure about how to utilize it, just because there's many options. For example, one option which was originally tempting was to play g9. The idea of g9 is that I'm threatening to cut, black has to connect to save the stones, otherwise I get connected and just everything's too strong and too flexible. Then I play here. And my idea was to say, well, you're locked in with me, these stones are going to die. And I was thinking about this variation, and I decided that it's actually very risky, and it gives black a lot of counterplay. For example, black can play these exchanges, then he can play here. I have to block if I want to kill, and now this cutting point is extremely annoying, and now there's a plethora of options for black, such as cut, which looks very ugly, of course. He should probably start with this cut. And then he can cut this way. And this looks extremely ugly, but the more I thought about it, the more I suspected that I'm potentially not surviving with everything. Like, for example, I need to save these stones somehow. Let's say I pull them out this way, and if I somehow protect the corner, then this is looking really dire for my stones. Like, really dire. I'm just dead. I'm just gonna die, I think. Or at least his stones aren't dying either. So this type of variation was going through my mind, and I suspect that things aren't going well for me. There's a lot of shape problems for black, for white, a lot of counterplay for black. And even though I couldn't read it clearly, I figured I'm getting into potentially trouble. So I opted for what I think is a very pragmatic move, which I think still gives white a big advantage in this G11. So here I'm not killing black, but black basically can't move. Black is extremely restricted by the really heavy stones that he created for himself. In the game, he turned heavily, I played here. And in the coming sequence, black got really over-concentrated, whereas I got some really efficient stones as a wall, and I figured that this should be good for me. Of course, it would be absolutely epic if black had to live by playing here, making a double B2 bomber shape, making the watchers of my stream very proud. Yeah. But black can actually live the way that he did live in the game, which is by playing these exchanges and living on the first line. And this is, in my opinion, the only factor that makes the game even bearable for black, is that black hits the Hane and double Hane and has the follow-up at C later. Nevertheless, I like my position here because, of course, I'm cramped on the left side, he's cramped here, like there's lots of dumplings. But finally, the way that black's B2 bomber shape sort of got cramped while I curled around it, I figured that that should be efficient for me, and that my wall is going to be really useful. And I also figured when I played f16 at this point that his stones in the center basically have to be let go of. Like, let's say the black tries to save them by, like, jumping or something. There's a very big price to pay on the lower side, and black still has a very heavy group. If you jump, I can actually wedge, and you're in trouble. So, actually, you're not in trouble unless I play this exchange first to make sure you're not actually connecting. Like, black is in trouble because the group on the top side needs some life, and in the center I have this type of wedge, which creates all kinds of issues for black. Because white's really thick and black's really thin, so this type of variation can very often end badly, and the group is very, very cumbersome. So in the game, he made what I thought was the pragmatic decision. He exchanged b16 to milk as much profit as he could off of the group, and then finally he plays e16, I push. He plays f15, and now it's very clear that black has no intention of saving the stones. He's going to let me capture them. And this is sort of what I expected, but I also figured that that meant that the game's sort of good for me, because I'm getting back my territory, and I got a very nice shape in the center. So I felt good at this point. And not only did I feel good, but the point for this review is that I felt very good. I looking at the game later with AI, I realize I'm better, I'm clearly better, but I'm not that much better. And you still have to play reasonably, the game is not over. And in the game, I think my tournament success, and also the fact I'm playing against an opponent who undoubtedly is very strong, especially after the results this tournament, who's in shape, but I have good results against him. I have been doing well against Jonas recently, and I considered, I've won like my last 4 games against him. So I was feeling confident. I'm an opponent I'm better. I'm that I'm good at beating usually. I'm in a tournament where I'm doing well. Look at me, I'm amazing. And then my overconfidence sort of got to me, and this is where things started to go wrong. So the first thing I did wrong, I think, was f14. I believe the pragmatic choice is d17, because after all, the corner territory is huge. If black blocks at e17, I can hand it c18. This exchange is for naught because I'm still making territory. And to reiterate, black can technically pull out the stones, but this makes the stones very heavy. Black has to survive with these guys, and that weakens the top side considerably, so it's not a decision that black can make lightly, because even though he saves the profit of the stones by running out, he's not necessarily... he might be losing more profit than he's getting, let's say. So that's a difficult decision to make. In the game, I went for the insurance of f14, taking the stones, which is a passive move, allowing black to take the corner. And one of the reasons I played this move was because I wanted to be able to pull my stone out at g16 later, and I did this immediately. And this was a huge misjudgment on my part that starts the long process of me losing my advantage. I believe at this moment I should probably start finding a way to turn this into profit, because it is there. It is a valuable structure, but I have to find a way to use it. And in retrospect, I would have played n16. And in case black m17, I would just make the top side small, and sort of get these stones to work together to eventually build a little bit of profit. Another option I could consider is simply playing 3, because it's huge. It's just big on territory. And those options exist. In the game, I played g16, which is a very questionable move, because even though I'll live on the top side, I can very easily make the top side small by playing n16, right? Black is not going to build there, certainly. That's one of the advantages of my influence also. It's hard for black to build. And then in the game, I ended up erasing the side, but also erasing sort of the potential that my own influence gives me. One of the reasons I did this, I think, was that I sort of like the idea of this turn, because I have, I really like stuff like this Atari, because it's a really good exchange for white, just inherently. It's like, white plays an Atari, getting, territory on the second line, and black has to connect in dumb, and I was like, yes! And that felt a little bit too good. Of course, what I neglected during the game, because I had a very optimistic mindset, is that when I play C, black plays D. And CD is a terrible exchange, because it's hurting my influence, it's hurting my shape. C and E are cut in a fully split Kama shape, the stones are not working together, it's atrocious. But this is something that happens that I caution my students against doing, and then I do it myself, is that when people think of moves, they very often think of the benefits that they get, or but they don't think about the things they don't get, or the things that they are losing. So very often we tend to fixate on one part of the deal that we are striking, not the entire deal. And this is a very good example. I focused on what I can get on the top side, and I got a living sequence where I lived with my group. But I gave black all of this structure, and I lost Sente, which finally means that I think basically my advantage is gone after this sequence. And this was just a huge misjudgment on my part, which I think was born mostly out of overconfidence. And another problem during this game is that I was confident enough that I wasn't really concerned by this. I was like, well, this doesn't look very good for me, but the game was so good for me beforehand that that doesn't matter. And that was probably also a misjudgment that led me to play a little bit too confidently throughout the game. But for the moment, the game's like still decent for white, and we will see black playing b4. b4 is a very big move, also because it sort of activates the cutting points at a and b. I tried to fix the cutting point efficiently, playing these moves and sort of putting some pressure on black's shape. Eventually, black fixed this way, which gave me a 3-stone structure in the center, which I liked, and also means that, you know, later I might be able to play something like this move, which takes black's side space on the lower side and forces black to react, sort of. So I didn't mind that. And my cutting points in the center, according to my reading, were sort of fixed. So let's say black plays here and here. I can basically contain black, and black can't get out. And in case black plays here, that's much more complicated, but I figure I can fight with moves like j6 and cut through. And in case black plays here, that was even more complicated, and this is questionable whether white could handle this, but probably white's fine. But it's really complicated, so this was a risky decision by me also. The point of it being that white can sort of live inside if he really needs to, so I'm not in huge trouble here. But for example, if I push, black can even consider sacrificing the 4 stones, because now the white group is really hard to live with and it's unclear. So I'm still playing very, very dangerously, and I might just be forced to, like, you know, plead for my life at some point or another with, let's say, some sequence like this where I try to scrounge for ice space. So this was risky. But I was playing confidently, I guess. Okay. Black J13. J13 is a move that still baffles me. I have to ask Jonas what was up with that move. White's influence isn't particularly poignant here. It's not like White's building anything big. It's not like Black's weak. It's not like Black has significant cutting points. J13 just baffled me. And I got sent to play R8, and now I actually felt good about the game again, which is a dangerous feeling, because the game is still okay for Black. One slow move will not shift the game that completely back to White's favor. And then actually, here, I think my opponent sort of decided to take this opportunity to sort of press the white stone and get some extra strength in the center in order to finance or power any offensive on the 3 stones on this cutting point here. And that's actually why, instead of going for something greedy like this cash grab where I just take points on the lower side, but strengthen black shape in the center, I took pains to create this cutting point at A so that my structure is a little bit better, and I can fight in the center. And as predicted, he went for the fight. He actually jumped at J7, which allows me to compromise connecting my stones. But he was saying, oh, because A is Sente, maybe B is my Sente, then I can actually attack your 3 stones. Maybe not kill them, but, you know, certainly attack them. And this is, I think, the moment where the game really went wrong. Up until this point, I've probably lost my lead, but I'm okay. And the problem is that emotionally, I hadn't adapted to this yet. I still felt like I was ahead, and I had not really adjusted. Though intellectually, I knew that, you know, the top side was a big loss for me. Emotionally, I still felt quite good because of the tournament situation. A lot of things got to my head, I think. And I played unwisely here. I played really carelessly. Another factor that sort of went wrong for me, paradoxically, is that my opponent was in Byoyomi. So Jonas gets into Byoyomi quite early. I had like a 20-minute time advantage on him, and I really wanted to pressure him. You're in 20-second Byoyomi. I'm going to play quickly. I'm going to play sharply. I'm going to pressure you. And actually, that has its issues because I pressured myself into playing too quickly and made some really big mistakes in the upcoming fight, which allowed black to take the advantage. So I pulled out my group. This isn't just fine. And this is complicated, but it's actually fine. And this is where I erred. So at this very moment, I should probably do something like take. And I'm threatening to cap these stones, like play here. No, not there. Play here and just basically connect all my stones and make a solid shape, which would be quite good. So black could prevent that either by pulling out his stones or by capturing and saving his stones here. In this case, however, I have a lot of dynamic play because my stones on the right side are not going to die yet. They've been damaged, but they're not going to die. And most importantly, I have some ideas to cut black in the center. Well, I'll cut off these center stones. And you will notice that in the game, this wasn't possible. And the reason is that I just didn't pay attention to my liberties as much as I should have, and I got into real trouble. I can cut here at A, and black can't really prevent himself from being cut. And this is a big deal. For example, here I'm threatening to play A and just connect all my stones. Black can't connect because I take it C. And what this results in, effectively, is that black would sort of be forced to compromise, I think. Like, I think most likely is that black pulls out his stones and lives. I live, but then black also has a problem on the lower side because this group is sort of running out of ice space and liberties. So black has a lot of problems to tend to, and white's actually still okay. Black's attempt at attacking probably didn't work out. Black has to live, white has to live, the game continues, and black didn't really get anything except white's now clearly connected, and, you know, remember how here white has some clear weaknesses, well, a few moves later, white doesn't anymore, white's just okay. So black's attack maybe shouldn't have worked out, but I misplayed here. I played a really bad move, and then played an even worse move. I played 07. And the idea of 07 was that I wanted to fix this cutting point in Sente. I was like, black will connect here, right? And then A doesn't work anymore because I just take it B. So now black's under even more pressure. Right after playing this move, I saw black an Atari. And the reason I missed Atari is that it's an ugly move. But it connects everything. And now I sort of have to regroup and rethink. But in the game, I played a really terrible move. And the reason was that I was playing quickly and I wasn't thinking about, again, the negative consequences of my moves. I played an Atari. And it's very natural to play an Atari, but this is the type of move that I would scold my students for doing because it's taking my own liberty. And I always tell this to my students, be careful when you take your own liberties. I wasn't careful. And we'll see how important this is in just a second. I took, which is what I should have done 2 moves ago. Black played some exchanges, which is fine, and then took. Now imagine for a second that these exchanges had not been made, and black just cuts, right? Black had just cut the stone at this particular timing. It's my turn. I Atari, black takes. This is a very, very, very different picture because neither one of black's marked stones is there. They're not sent there anymore. So I can cut again and put black's center stones into trouble. So something like this, I can Atari, play here, and black's dying. I can also, you know, if black gets out, I can just connect. And now black's lower side is under pressure, and white has no issues. White resolved all his problem, connected all his stones. In the game, at this moment, I realized how much trouble I'm in. I can't move. This group is fantastically heavy and has no liberties. And I didn't realize what I'd done until afterwards. How these 2 exchanges, which I played so thoughtlessly, just got me in trouble. And what this looks like is that I played like some Byo-Yomi exchanges because I was under time pressure. But in fact, I was not under time pressure. I was trying to pressure my opponent. I myself had like 15 minutes left. And here I actually had to spend a lot of my time. Because I realized, oh, if I play J6 now, well, I can't do this anymore because I die. And black can connect here, and I still die. Like, I'm just out of liberties. And in fact, what this shape really looks like is that black can get these exchanges and sent there at his leisure, which means I just have a really like heavy, cumbersome group, and black's all connected. So at this point, I realize I'm in deep trouble, and that my group in the center might even die. So this was a very abrupt change of pace, and I think it was only around this point that I really realized how much trouble I'm in. So up until here, I still felt confident about the game, among other things because of my time advantage, and I didn't evaluate the position correctly, rationally. Like, I sort of did evaluate it rationally, but I didn't listen to my rationale. I still felt good about the position, and that was very dangerous. So at this point, reality started to sink in, and I'm like, oh man, I can't move. Like, my group is just paralyzed. And eventually, after thinking for a while, I found L11, which I think is a good move. And it's sort of trying to worm its way, like the group is sort of trying to worm its way out using the Yaji to play A, and you know, use the like for example, let's say later, B is going to be sent to cut here. So, and it's also going to be sent to start a ko or potentially to threaten to start a ko in case black connects, white can also connect. So this is a good idea to get out, and this is exactly what I managed in the game. I did play n8, and if black is to connect and prevent me from connecting here, because now black can cut, that carries significant risks for his stones in the center, because, for example, I'm going to be able to cut this way, probably this way. Maybe I play here first, threatening to connect, and if he insists on cutting, then maybe I can get away with like playing here and then like cutting here, and remember that I'm actually threatening to cut here, and even though the cut is gote, black is sort of owing a move there, and that's very dangerous for black. But actually finding the exact variation is not trivial here. I'm wondering if I should... This exchange is fine, but then maybe I should go for something even more extreme, such as the cut, which is insane, but maybe it works. I'm scared about black cutting. But actually black cutting, yeah, black cutting and black Atariing. Is black safe here? It's really unclear. Because white technically can start taking lots of liberties and then sort of kill black. So it's very dangerous for black also, and this is the type of stuff I was reading in the game. So creating all of these cutting points and the threat of cutting at A, it's really hard for black to navigate. And my opponent, who was already in Byoyomi, got concerned enough about this type of cutting idea that he just fixed his shape in the center. And we got to this position where I connected. And I connected, so I survived and I stay in the game, but at this point I'm already behind. Black exchanged a couple of center exchanges, and 15 capturing the stones here while threatening to cut at B, so I also defended that. And we got to this position where I survived with my stones, but my stones were all on dame. And most importantly, black connected all his stones very solidly, very efficiently in Sente. And he still has these moves in Sente also. So even though before, if we go a long way back, I was saying how the black stones here have a liberty problem, and if I ever play a move like maybe here, I can like play here and enclose the black group, and maybe play here and the black group has no eyes, so the black group here is not completely settled and sort of has to react to what I'm doing. And in the game, black just connected everything solidly and in Sente. He even got a little bit of reduction on the right side while he was at it. And N15, reducing all the yaji of the marked stones. So he got a lot of like side profit while making this attack. Got Sente, solidified everything, and at this point I think I'm slightly behind. The game is still technically winnable, like I might be able to manage, but I think I should lose. And I understood that during the game. At this point I was thinking, oh no. Because black is just too solid, black got too much safety here. Now, the rest of the game is not... I did stir up some trouble, for example. Here I should be slightly behind, black got some nice endgame. And then later I went for this Hane, which, if some of you don't know about this, the point is that black is supposed often to play S17, and let me push once more and get slightly better center endgame, because if black if black blocks, white can cut, die with one stone, but then live with this very interesting move. And then black cannot kill. Black cannot kill unless, like, for example, he has a stone here already, and then he can play this Tetsuji, where he runs on the first line. But usually this white shape is alive, and it is alive here. But my opponent was prepared for this, and he played the ko. And we played this really interesting ko, where... Oh, whoops. Let's go back. Okay. We played this ko, which was very interesting. And I thought that maybe my chances of winning the game are still sort of alive, because this ko is very unclear, and I was only slightly behind before it started. But I made one final mistake, which sort of made the game completely clear. Okay, ko continues, and yeah. black played a threat at e4, and I ignored it. And the reason I ignored it was that at this point I was sort of running out of threats. I didn't see where I have a good threat. And black still has threats at A and B, for example, to capture my stones in the middle. And I was thinking, well, where are my threats? And I did see a couple of them, like cutting at B18. If black wins the ko, I can at the very least capture the 2 stones this way. And I also saw that I can play here, and if black connects, I can live. And I saw both of these threats, but I was counting, and in both cases, I'm slightly behind. I'm a couple of points behind, and it's also black's turn. So black gets to start the endgame. So I looked at all of those options, and I was like, well, none of my co-threats are enough anymore. Let's ignore this one. And that's a mistake that some people make that I also teach my students. Like, be careful about this phenomenon. If you look at 2 options, you look one of them first, and you discard it because it's bad, and you play the other one without analyzing it, it might be worse. So here, when black cuts, I'm actually behind by more than 2 points, maybe by 4, because the lower side's really big. So here, I'm just done. I ended up losing by 6 points because I made another endgame mistake a little bit later in the game. But this was probably the point where like all hope, is gone. Like if I keep playing the ko, there's still confusion on the board. My opponent might still answer this move, which I think he actually was intending to, and then, whoops. After I take, there's a chance that I might find a decent co-threat. This is actually still my co-threat. So I have some options. I'm very unlikely to win, but it's not over. The complications aren't done. So after I just settled the ko into a losing endgame, that was just, game over. Now, to be fair to me, it was 20-second Byoyomi, and counting correctly what's going on after each ko finishes, and counting the score accurately is very difficult. But, it was already a difficult position for me, so the damage was done earlier. And yeah, endgame finished, and I lost by 6.5. Yeah. And this was quite a painful loss, because I got what I considered a very good result. Apparently it wasn't as good as I thought it was, but it was still very good, because black stones are just inefficient. I got a good result on the left side, and sort of rode that high throughout the game, even though the game state was deteriorating as I played it, and emotionally I never adapted to that. And I was also thinking about stuff in the tournament that's ancillary, like who's going to win, like tournament standings. That's not important while you're playing the game. While you play the game, you play the game. You don't worry about rating, about anything. You worry about the game. You play it. And I didn't manage to do that. So I made certain mistakes regarding my competitive mindset towards the game. And I sort of, I showed my inexperience as a competitor to an extent. And my opponent sort of fell behind, but then he played very pragmatically, let go of his heavy stones in the center, found a good way to sacrifice them, and then sort of took advantage of my mistakes on the top side, and then made some really interesting decisions that made my life difficult, such as attachment going after my 3 stones, and just made the game complex and interesting. And even though he got into Byoyomi much sooner than I did, he played really accurately, and Jonas did go on to win the tournament. He was 4-0 after this game. He was undefeated. He stayed undefeated for the tournament. He's clearly in shape, and very possibly a contender for the professional qualification in Europe. And I'm very happy for him, because he's a cool guy, and very unique, dynamic style of play. And on one hand, for me, I was a bit disappointed, because I do have a good record against Jonas in the last year and a half, 2 years, and I sort of expected to win, and I got my hopes dashed. But that's I have no one to blame but myself. Well, Jonas for playing well, but myself for mistakes in my attitude and mistakes I made during the game. And during the after the game, I was a little bit disappointed, and unhappy. But I had to regroup for future rounds. I'm still playing a tournament. I'm still enjoying the games. This game was very fun to play, even if the result was disappointing. And lots to learn. So I guess that's it for this review. Thank you very much for watching till the end. Again, a longer video. I sort of get carried away talking, even though I wanted to make the video shorter than half an hour, but I can't help myself. So thank you if you reached the end. I hope you found this informative and helpful. Drop a like if you did. Feel free to ask questions and comment. And see you guys in the next video for round 5.